You smelled it before you saw it. You were still in the car, windows down, pulling off the highway, and the air changed. It hit you the way a memory hits you all at once without warning. Hot oil, fresh batter, fried cod, and something underneath it all, something sharp and tangy that you could not name until you walked inside and saw the little bottles on the counter. Malt vinegar. You did not know what malt vinegar was before this restaurant. Nobody in America did. But after your first visit, you never ate fried fish without it again. That restaurant was called Arthur Treacher's. There were 826 of them, and then there were 3. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. You saw the sign from a block away. A yellow lantern glowing against the green shingle roof, and the name in Old English lettering that made the whole place look like it had been lifted out of a village in the English countryside and dropped on a highway in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Michigan. It looked nothing like a McDonald's. It looked nothing like a Burger King. It looked like a place where the food was gonna be different, and it was. You walked in and the heat hit you first. The fryers were working. The smell was everywhere, in the walls, in the ceiling, in the paper on the trays. You did not order from a menu board with pictures. You ordered from a woman behind a counter who already knew what you wanted because everyone who walked through that door wanted the same thing: fish and chips. 2 pieces of cod, battered and fried to a golden brown that crackled when you bit into it. The batter was light, not heavy, not greasy, not the thick dough that other places used to hide cheap fish underneath. This batter let the fish through. You could taste the cod, you could taste the ocean, and the chips, thick cut, hot. More potato than you had ever tasted in a French fry because they were closer to what the British meant by chips. Not thin, not crispy, thick and soft on the inside with a crust on the outside that held the heat. And then there were the hush puppies, small golden balls of fried cornmeal that came on the side and disappeared before the fish was half gone. You ate them with your fingers. Everyone ate them with their fingers. There was no dignified way to eat a hush puppy, and nobody tried. And the coleslaw, creamy, cold, the perfect thing to put next to hot fried fish, because the temperature difference made both of them taste better. That was the whole meal: fish, chips, hush puppies, coleslaw, simple, perfect, the same every time. And every time felt like the first time. Your family went on Friday nights, not every Friday, but enough Fridays that it became a thing, a pattern, a ritual, the kind of evening that you did not plan, but that happened because everyone in the house was tired and nobody wanted to argue about dinner. Your mother did not have to cook. Your father did not have to grill. Nobody had to set the table or wash the dishes or argue about whose turn it was to dry. Everyone got in the car and drove to Arthur Treacher's, and nobody argued about what to order because there was only one thing to order and everyone wanted it. The line moved fast. The woman behind the counter put the order together in less than 2 minutes. Fish, chips, hush puppies, coleslaw, all of it on a paper tray with a paper placemat that had the Arthur Treacher's logo on it and a drawing of the man himself looking dignified in his bow tie, like he was serving you dinner at a manor house instead of a fast food restaurant off Route 30. The trays were paper, the forks were plastic, the napkins were thin, and none of it mattered because the food was hot and the vinegar was on the table and your father was already shaking it over his fish before he sat down. You ate fast because it was best hot, and you knew from experience that a cold Arthur Treacher's fish fillet was a different thing entirely from a hot one. The batter went soft if you waited, the chips got limp, the hush puppies turned from golden to gray, but hot, straight off the tray, steam rising, the batter still crackling when you picked it up. Hot was perfection. You burned the roof of your mouth and you did not care. Everyone burned the roof of their mouth. It was part of the experience. You drank your Pepsi too fast to cool the burn, and you reached for another piece of fish before the first one was finished because there were only 2 pieces and your brother was eating just as fast as you were. The parking lot was always full on Friday nights. You could see families through the windows, mothers and fathers and kids, all eating the same thing, all shaking the same little bottles of vinegar, all burning the same roofs of their mouths. It was not fancy. It was not expensive. A family of 4 could eat for under $10. And when you got back in the car and drove home, the smell came with you. In your clothes, in your hair, on your fingers. Your mother would say you smelled like a fish market, and your father would say that was fine by him, and nobody opened the windows because the smell was not something you wanted to get rid of. It was proof that the evening had happened. What most people did not know, what most people still do not know, is who started it. The man who helped create Arthur Treacher's fish and chips was named Dave Thomas. That name might not mean anything to you in the context of fried fish, but it will mean everything to you in the context of what he did next. Dave Thomas left Arthur Treacher's in 1969, the same year it opened, and started another restaurant in Columbus, Ohio. He called it Wendy's, named it after his 8-year-old daughter. Square hamburgers, chocolate Frosties, where's the beef? The man who gave America its most famous hamburger chain started by giving America fish and chips. Both restaurants were born in the same city, in the same year, from the same man, and one became a global empire while the other became a ghost. The name itself came from Bob Hope. The comedian born in Cleveland, raised in Ohio, suggested naming the restaurant after Arthur Treacher, a British actor best known for playing Jeeves the butler in Shirley Temple films and appearing in Mary Poppins. Treacher had nothing to do with cooking. He had nothing to do with fish. He was an English gentleman in a bow tie whose face and name made the whole operation feel authentic, and in a way it was, because the recipe was real. The founders did something that no other fast food chain in America had ever done. They traveled to London, to Bow, in the East End, where a man named Joseph Malin had opened the first recorded fish and chip shop in England in the 1860s. Malin's, the original. The founders bought the recipe, not a version of it, not an interpretation, the actual recipe from the first fish and chip shop in the history of the world. They brought it back to Ohio and they fried fish with it, and it tasted like nothing else in America because it was not from America. It was from a shop in Bow that had been frying cod for 100 years before anyone in Columbus had ever heard of malt vinegar. 826 locations. That is how big Arthur Treacher's got by the late 1970s. The yellow lanterns were everywhere. The green roofs dotted highways from the East Coast to the Midwest. Families lined up on Friday nights. Catholic families lined up on Ash Wednesday. The owner of the Cuyahoga Falls location said they had people waiting outside before the doors opened. For a few years, Arthur Treacher's was not just a restaurant, it was a ritual. And then someone changed the fish. In 1979, a company called Mrs. Paul's bought Arthur Treacher's. Mrs. Paul's was a frozen fish company based in Philadelphia. They made fish sticks and frozen fillets for grocery store freezer aisles. They knew fish the way a factory knows fish, by the pound, by the cost, by the margin, and they knew that North Atlantic cod, the fish that the Malin's recipe specified, the fish that made Arthur Treacher's taste like Arthur Treacher's, the fish that people drove across town for on a Friday night, was expensive. The price of cod had been climbing for years. Overfishing in the North Atlantic was reducing the supply, and Mrs. Paul's, sitting in a boardroom in Philadelphia, looked at a spreadsheet and saw a line item that could be reduced. Pollock was cheaper. Pollock was abundant. Pollock could be caught in larger quantities with lower costs. And pollock, Mrs. Paul's reasoned, could be battered and fried and placed on a paper tray and served to a customer who might not notice the difference. After all, it was covered in batter. How much could the fish itself matter? It mattered. It mattered enormously. The franchise owners knew it the moment the first shipment of pollock arrived at their back doors. The texture was different, softer, less firm, more prone to falling apart when you bit into it. The flavor was different, milder, less distinctive, missing the richness that made cod taste like the ocean instead of the freezer. And the batter did not cling to pollock the same way it clung to cod. The Malin's recipe had been perfected over a century for one fish. It was being applied to another. And the result was not Arthur Treacher's. It was something that looked like Arthur Treacher's and smelled almost like Arthur Treacher's, but tasted like a lie. The franchise owners said so, loudly. They said the customers could taste it. They said the regulars, the Friday night families, the Ash Wednesday Catholics, the people who drove past 3 other fish restaurants to get to the one with the yellow lantern, those regulars were asking what had changed. And the franchise owners had to stand behind the counter and say nothing had changed when they knew everything had changed. The lawsuits began. Franchise owners accused Mrs. Paul's of violating the terms of the franchise agreement by changing the core product. Mrs. Paul's accused the franchise owners of not adapting to market realities. The relationship between the company and its restaurants did not deteriorate. It exploded. Locations that had been profitable for a decade began losing money because the customers could taste the difference and the customers stopped coming. A restaurant that had been built on one thing, the best fried cod in America, no longer served the best fried cod in America. It served pollock. And pollock was not worth the drive. Mrs. Paul sold Arthur Treacher's in 1982, 3 years after buying it. 3 years was all it took to destroy something that had taken 10 years to build. 3 years. A frozen fish company bought a beloved restaurant, changed the one thing that made it special, and walked away when the math stopped working. That is not a business failure. That is an act of vandalism. After that, the chain passed from owner to owner the way a house passes through a family that no longer wants it. Investors in Youngstown bought it and moved the headquarters. Investors in Jacksonville bought it and moved the headquarters again. Each one had a plan. Each plan involved words like restructure and modernize and rebrand. None of them involved the words that mattered, Seud and Malin's and Friday night. They were trying to save a business. They should have been trying to save a meal. The locations closed one by one. You did not notice at first. You drove past the one on your way to work and the parking lot was a little emptier than it used to be. Then one day the sign was different. The yellow lantern was gone and the name was gone. And the building was a Chinese takeout place or a dry cleaner or nothing at all. Just a dark building with a for-lease sign and a green roof that nobody had bothered to repaint. You did not think much about it. You figured there were others. You figured the one across town was still open. And then that one closed too. By the mid-1980s, the yellow lanterns were going dark across the country, the way streetlights go dark in a power outage, one by one, block by block, until the whole street is black. Cities that had 3 Arthur Treachers had 2. Cities that had 2 had 1. Cities that had 1 had none. And the families that had gone every Friday night did not replace it with another fish restaurant because there was no other fish restaurant that tasted like that. They went to McDonald's instead, or Long John Silver's. Or they stayed home and their mother made fish sticks from the freezer and everyone ate them and nobody said anything because nobody wanted to say what everyone was thinking. This is not the same. Long John Silver's took the market. Captain D's took what was left. McDonald's added a fish sandwich and Burger King added a fish sandwich, and every fast food chain in America decided that a square piece of processed fish on a bun was close enough to fish and chips for a country that had forgotten what the real thing tasted like. It was not close enough. It was not even in the same ocean, but the country had moved on, and the yellow lanterns were dark, and the bottles of malt vinegar were in a landfill somewhere, and nobody was going to correct them. Today, there are 3 standalone Arthur Treacher's restaurants in the world. All three are in northeastern Ohio: Cuyahoga Falls, Garfield Heights, Cleveland Heights. That one reopened in April of 2025 in a building that had been an Arthur Treacher's in the 1970s before it became something else and then became nothing. A fourth location is planned for Grandview Heights in Columbus, in the original building where an Arthur Treacher stood in the 1980s. The building remembers even if the city forgot. The owner of the Cuyahoga Falls location, a man named Ben Vittoria, described his customers with one word: cult. It's almost like a cult, he said. They love the fish and also reliving their memories coming here with their parents or grandparents. He said that on Ash Wednesday, people line up outside the door before they open, not because it is the only restaurant that serves fish, because it is the only restaurant that serves this fish, in this batter, with this vinegar, the way it was in 1972 when their mother did not have to cook and their father did not have to grill, and the whole family got in the car and drove to the place with the yellow lantern and the green roof. A reporter for the Cleveland Plain Dealer wrote something about Arthur Treacher's that said it better than anyone: a place that time forgot, but the people are increasingly coming to remember. That is what happened. 826 locations became 3. The man who started it went on to build one of the biggest restaurant chains in the world, and the restaurant he started first was Forgotten. A frozen fish company replaced the cod with pollock, and the customers tasted the difference and walked away. Owner after owner tried to fix it, and owner after owner failed. And the yellow lanterns that once dotted every highway in the Midwest went dark one by one until the only glow left was in Ohio. But here is the thing about Arthur Treacher's that no owner could destroy, and no competitor could replace, and no amount of pollock could erase. You remember the smell. You are thinking about it right now. Hot oil, fresh batter, fried cod, and something sharp and tangy underneath it all that you did not know the name of until a woman behind a counter pointed at a little bottle and said, "Try this, malt vinegar." You shook it over your fish and something clicked. The acid cut through the oil, the fish tasted brighter, the chips tasted better, and for the rest of your life, every time you ate fried fish without malt vinegar, something was missing. You could never quite explain what it was, but you knew. You always knew. It was a little restaurant with a yellow lantern and a green roof and a recipe from a shop in London that had been frying fish since before your grandparents were born. And it smelled like Friday night, and it smelled like family, and it smelled like something that should not have disappeared but did.